tragedies into your own triumphant life story? If so, this podcast is for you. Listen to powerful guests who have persevered through challenges so you can gain strength to build your championship life. The host of Professor of Perseverance podcast, Dr. James Purdue.
Hey, and thank y'all for coming back again. Hey, we got another topic, another success story overcoming adversities. Hey, I'm Dr. James Purdue, the Professor of Perseverance. Thank you for coming in on the Professor of Perseverance podcast. Today, our topic is about surviving domestic abuse and sexual assault from a decade-long relationship. Okay, now, as we're going through here, she said one day, I don't know when we'll get into this, she woke up and she decided it's time to get out. So she bravely went and stepped out of the relationship, demanded a divorce, and escaped from her abuser, which she said was much harder than it sounds. And I have no doubt about that. Okay. By refusing to let him win, working on her own mental health, and a lot of hard work, she is now living life to the fullest. She is a survivor advocate, volunteer, and author of the book right here, Sheila's Men. All right, welcome to the show, Jenna Ashlyn.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Hey, thank you again. I tell people for sharing your valuable time, because we know time is valuable, and helping people, today, tomorrow, and 100 years from now, someone's going to find this thing and just think how we're going to be helping people then. So appreciate you coming on and sharing your journey, your story.
I'm glad to be here.
So all I'm doing right now is I'm just providing a platform for you to open up and tell your story. So jump on in where you feel fit, and then I'll bounce in and out in between when I come up with questions.
Okay, sounds good. All right, so this part of my story started whenever I was about 30 years old. I actually lost my husband just a few years to a heart attack, and it was devastating. Forgive me if I say a lot, but sometimes it's just kind of hard to get through it. I remember not really knowing what to do with myself, and I found myself surrounded by people that were guys that were flirting with me, and I didn't really understand why, because I'm not really the kind of girl that expects that kind of thing. And I remember at his funeral, guys started hitting on me. So it left me in a very vulnerable state. My mind wasn't good either, because I was going through a lot of grief. And because of that, I started looking for a friend and ended up meeting a guy, and he was completely okay with just being friends and wasn't trying to push me into anything at first. But before too long, he did start pushing. And I figured, well, maybe it's just me where I'm not really ready yet. And I just need, to just not let this guy go, because he seems like a good man, and, he's willing to help me through this. So, long story short, I ended up marrying him, and everything completely changed. Before long, I wasn't able to mourn my husband, and I ended up turning to writing at that point, and I wrote a different book than the one that you mentioned. It's called Within the Gray, and I'll just show a picture of it real quick. But it was the first book that I wrote. This is Within the Gray. Try that.
All right.
And so I started writing it as a way to kind of like mourn him. But as I went along, I started to realize a lot of the things that were happening to me, and really noticing that things weren't right in the relationship. And it was kind of a slow process of me understanding what was going on, and a lot of things started happening. Um, I noticed that there were a lot of times where I was talking myself into being okay with different sexual activities, and I noticed more and more how much manipulation was going on. I wasn't allowed to talk about my husband that died. I wasn't allowed to mourn him without without my current husband, my abuser, just kind of attacking me and feeling guilty and, I mean, attacking verbally, saying
Yeah.
that, I shouldn't be mourning him and that it just showed that I didn't care about my abuser because he was also my husband. And it was just a very difficult time. And I kind of created my own world, and within the gray, I kind of showed all of the things that should have happened and the support person that I really wanted, the kind of guy I wanted to be with. And Sheila's men, towards the end of the relationship and afterwards, I wrote what actually happened. And that's kind of where the books basically got their start, is me just kind of taking that time to confess what had happened to me. Because one of the biggest things that he said whenever we finally got our divorce was that I needed to not talk about it. If I said anything, then he would come after me and he would make my life a living hell. And he would tell everything that I did too, because I made a lot of mistakes in that process.
Hmm.
And so writing the book was a way for me to kind of finally speak up. And it's been very powerful. It's been powerful for everyone who's read it. It can be quite triggering. I don't in any way try to hide that. But I think being triggered is important because it helps you heal, it helps you grow, it lets you know that there are still emotions that you have. And being
That,
triggered
that
and
you need to
reading
deal
books like
with.
this, yes, exactly. Being
Yeah.
triggered is a great way to, get a journal and embrace those emotions and allow yourself to feel them, and realize that your emotions are valid, and how important it is to jot down those thoughts and those feelings. And that can be a great thing to take to your therapist, because if you're in any kind of therapy, you're probably not seeing them often enough to really dig in deep. Um, and I'll stop there and see if you have any questions to kind of
Well,
see what kind of details you want
journey,
to know.
well, journaling is also a good form of therapy, or anyway. And whether you show it to anyone or not, just openly putting it out there can feel good. Now, I like what you said, journaling, and take it to your counselor or whatever. That way you don't forget what you want to talk about. You don't forget.
Right.
You're on the spot and you're going, well, I remembered what I wanted to say, but I can't remember it. Yeah, but if you take it because you've already opened it up, then you can go through it as you need to. So yeah, I'm all for the journaling. Now let me ask this question: your first husband, how long were y'all married?
He wasn't first, but my first,
Okay.
I actually have had some pretty bad history, but we were married for about 3 years.
Okay,
And
so all right, the one
um,
I'm talking about, I guess, the one that passed away, because that seems to be the
yes,
one that you were. That seems to be the one you're madly in love with to keep referring to him.
I most definitely was for a long time. And while I still love him, my life has changed a lot
Yeah,
since then, and I've grown a lot as a person because of all of my experiences. And I have a new love in my life, actually.
there we go. Good. Um, and then I was going to ask. You mentioned, and this sounds awful strange while you were saying it, and you referred to it as something's not going on right. People were flirting with you while you were getting him ready for the funeral, and afterwards
He
his
was,
death, and people were just that fast already flirting
yes,
to get with you. Did you ever find did
neighbors,
ever,
and they were
Good.
neighbors and friends of his.
Yeah.
that lived close by because we were living in subsidized housing at that time because we had a very large family. There was 6 kids total, and it was 3 teenagers and 3 toddlers because he was 11 years older than me.
Mm-hmm.
We had a lot of responsibilities and a hard time keeping up with that because he was sick from time to time and he did have some heart issues. But whenever he passed, it was still a really dramatic shock to the system.
Yeah. Oh,
It was
yes.
very, very difficult to deal with.
Oh, yes. Yeah. Yeah. Losing a loved one, even though you may know health issues going in, it still doesn't help the situation, when they do pass. Um, so this other guy that you married, the abuser, was he part of y'all's
Yes.
circle
No,
before
he
this?
was not.
You
He
him?
was
Okay.
no, he was somebody that I had met online because I was looking for somebody to kind of hang around and just be a friend and kind of deflect all of that. That way, they would say, "Oh, well, she's taken, better not keep bothering her." Um, so I made a friendship with this guy, and he was, tall and kind of a bigger guy, and it worked. So at one point, I even had a decoy ring, like a little fake ring from Walmart that looked like a real engagement ring. And I
Hmm.
wore it for a while just to get people
Just
to leave me alone.
to keep people away. So
Yeah.
I'm still having a hard time with understanding why would someone want to be so forward and flirting during that time of mourning, that time of grieving,
I
that
was,
fast. And Dad,
I know.
did you ever find out why, or they were doing that, or you just moved on ignoring it?
I had to ignore it. There was some sexual assault some attempted sexual assault at that point,
Hmm.
and that kind of, made me move faster, to
Yeah,
get somebody else in the picture to kind of deflect that. Only thing I could
yeah, yeah,
do is just, speculate. Maybe they
yeah,
thought I had money because, my husband had died, or maybe he was talking about me at work, or, I mean, I
yeah.
have no idea.
Okay, because I just can't see a normal person moving that fast. So,
No,
but maybe I mean maybe that's just me, but I just don't understand it. So, all right, then.
no,
So
it doesn't make any sense at all.
yeah, all right. So you were with this abuser. You say about a decade with this going on.
Yes,
So
yes,
and you mentioned you noticed things just wasn't going right with them being controlling, manipulative. Um, yeah, from there. Yeah.
yes. Yeah, he refused to work. And anytime that I was upset about something or I disagreed with him, or one of the things was, and I'm not trying to be like too forward or too graphic or anything, but I would ask for foreplay. I would ask for a little bit of affection. I would ask to be kissed, and he wouldn't do it. And he would say, "Well, I do touch you, I do kiss you," and like his version of that was like 2 seconds, and then I'm thrown on the bed.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I was never really ready for anything most of the time. And it got to the point where if I was doing something to him and I wanted to stop, or if I said no, he would keep asking and keep pushing himself on me until I just gave up.
Yeah. You
And
got
a lot of
exhausted.
I got
Yeah.
exhausted from saying no.
Yeah. Exhausted and just giving in. So you just finally give it in just so you can move on and get it over with and move on. Yeah. So,
Yeah,
and
because he would go for hours, without giving me much of a choice. And then after a while, especially where my husband had died, I was having issues feeling any kind of emotion for quite a long time. So I just blamed myself the entire time. And he was really good at making sure that I blamed myself. So it's,
oh,
well,
yeah,
that's what he did.
I've had other ladies on here, women on here, and that's gone through some domestic abuse relationships, and you're saying the same thing they've all said. They blame me for everything. They were never accountable for anything. It was always their fault. Always they did whatever would happen to them. It's because you made me do it. And yeah,
Yeah, in
it's the
one way or
same.
other, it's always going to be twisted.
Yeah.
And, even saying, I remember one time I was trying to talk on the phone with my mom, and he literally just kind of pushed me down and held me down on the kitchen island, just kind of like pushed me down and
Hmm.
pulled down my pants while I was talking on the phone with my mom, and did everything that he wanted to do
Yeah.
right while I was on the phone. And he thought it was funny. And that was like 5 or 10 minutes before the kids got home from school. And I just looked at him, and I tried to get off the phone, and he would tell me no, that I had to stay on the phone, that I couldn't move, I couldn't do anything. And I mean, that was really difficult because I would be in a lot of pain because I mean, all of a sudden you're in an awkward position, and things are happening to you while you're on the phone with your mom. I mean, that was horrible.
Oh yeah, 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 yeah. And here, I'm assuming you were trying to, hide everything from mom as much as possible as well. And even though
Yeah,
it may be in this painful whatever, you're still trying not to let her worry what's going on with you.
exactly, exactly. Because
Yeah.
I mean, you don't want to talk about that. And I mean, if he's right there, you can't really say anything because that could even make the violence worse. I
Hmm.
didn't want to be hit, and I know that I asked him, I didn't trust him. And like it took years for me to really realize what was going on. And around that same time that I started to wake up, I remember tucking my daughter into bed one night, and she was only 8 or 9 years old at the time. And she looked up at me and she's like, "Mommy, I want a new daddy." And that's when I knew that it was affecting a whole lot more than me. And while
Yes.
I was out working 50, 60 hours a week up at that point, I knew that things were happening at home too. I didn't know exactly what he was doing to them, but it seems like it was still mostly psychological. They
Hmm.
don't have a whole lot to say, but everything was always their fault. I remember him sitting at the table and crying, telling these little kids that you guys make me feel like you don't want me around and you guys hurt my feelings and stuff like that. A grown ass man in his 30s saying
Yeah.
that to little kids.
And I know the kids wouldn't have thought this, and they wouldn't have. Obviously, they didn't do it, but I wish they'd had the big old gumption to go, ding, 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 ding. You finally figured it out. Now go. You know what I'm saying? But
Right, right.
but that would have been hard on them because he would have took it out on them if they would have been point blank honest. And so I'm glad they didn't. But for him to realize something was going on, they were putting in a little bit for him to catch on. So I'm glad they were able to do that for themselves and for you.
Yes, it was a very difficult time. It's sometimes it gets really hard to express it
Yeah.
completely. That's a little bit of what the book is for, but I remember, we started out in subsidized housing, and I decided, well, he wouldn't go to work. He absolutely refused, saying he couldn't because he had social anxiety. He really didn't, because anytime we went anywhere, he didn't have any trouble talking to people.
Hmm.
I mean, every once in a while he would have an issue, but there was still a lot of things that he could do that didn't involve, talking to everybody. And it was quite funny because whenever I finally did
Yeah.
manage to, I was reading that comment that popped up.
Yeah. I'm getting
Whenever
ready to say Mystique is said that for 20 some years that she was going through this and realized how it was affecting the children. And that's when she decided it was time to get out. And Angry Quiet, hey, big guy, thank you for coming in, AQ. Saying hi to you, Jenna. So,
Hi.
yep. And so, yep. So, all right. Now,
So at
let's,
that point, go
yeah, go
ahead.
ahead. No, go ahead.
At that point of her saying that, I want a new daddy, it kind of kicked in a little heavier because I was figuring everything out, and then I was starting to realize that it was much bigger than myself and much bigger than me needing to heal from where my husband had passed away. So I started figuring out, okay, well, how am I going to get out of here? Because there was no shelters to go to. I didn't have family that could keep us. There was nowhere for us to go. Absolutely nowhere. So I started, trying to work, and just as quickly as I earned money, he managed to spend it on one thing or other. Sometimes I would get a chance to spend that on me and the kids, and that was really nice. But anytime that I spent something on myself, then he would want to spend some money on his hobbies. And
Hmm.
he had some pretty expensive hobbies, and they were kind of ridiculous. So
Now
after that,
let's let's get to the point here where you finally decide to wake up, be the brave woman, the brave mommy and woman of the thing, and it's time to step out. So when you confronted him, did you confront him about it? Did you just get up and leave, go to a safe home or something, and they got back to him on the divorce? How did all this take place? And I'm sure he didn't handle it well, no matter what happened.
it took a long time. There was a lot of things that happened in between,
Yeah.
but it wasn't as simple as all that because there was nowhere for us to go. I looked for years for there to be a place for us to go. So eventually it got to the point where he had actually asked for an open marriage. And in that, it took me like a week to agree to that. And it broke my heart. And from there on out, you know, I didn't consider myself a part of that relationship anymore. And I started to do a lot of soul searching and a lot of planning. And the kids started getting ready. They started learning how to do a few things for themselves. And at one point, one of my kids, my oldest, was actually thrown into the floor and he started yelling at her. And I stood up. It was right before Christmas. And I said, "That's it. I'm going and I am going to fill out the paperwork and everything for a divorce. You are going to leave. You have to find a job because you will not be living here." And when you know, after almost 10 years of him not being able to work, he got a job and he's still there. He's been there for years now. If,
The gravy
and I told
train
him,
has
I will
come
agree
to a
to whatever
stop.
terms that you want. And it cost me dearly. But he stayed even after I filed the divorce papers, and he was still assaulting me almost on a daily basis. And I just had to be strong enough, and it took every ounce of courage that I had every time. And every day he was going, "But you love me. You want me to stay. You don't want me to leave." And he tried that with the kids as well. And eventually, whenever it was the day of the divorce, after we got back from the courthouse, because he insisted that we go together, he changed the rims on his vehicle and then he finally left.
Hmm. Finally got the message. Taking that long.
I can't hear you.
I said he finally got the message. It took him that long. Oh, having some
I don't
difficulties here.
I don't hear you. Hold on a second.
Uh, okay.
Okay,
You're
try to
still
say
on with
something now.
me. I can hear you.
Okay, you're really
Hello.
low. I can barely hear you.
Hmm. I haven't touched anything. I hope everything's working all right. Oh, let me see.
Okay, what was your
Just
question? I'll have to lean in.
I I I was just saying it just took him that long for him to realize. You said the day of the divorce, and he finally packing and leaving. I said it took him that long to finally be convinced that you were really meaning this.
He still wasn't convinced. He would stalk me outside of my work. He would drive by about 10 or 15 times a day, and he would rev up his engine because I had bought them this little turbo car, and he made sure that I was there, and he would text me constantly, and he would ask for money constantly because that was part of the agreement that we ended up coming to. But he didn't want it on the schedule. He wanted it anytime and every time that he wanted it. He wouldn't let me mail it to him because I asked for his address about 100 times. And it was just an ongoing, constant stalking, and I ended up having to leave my job because of it.
Did you during all of this to get you going? Hey, AQ, yeah, we'll talk to you later, buddy. Thank you for coming in. Did any time during this, did you seek counseling to get advice or whatnot? How to deal with this, how to handle it, how to get yourself mentally, emotionally prepared for everything. So, did you seek for help during this?
Yes, I started seeking counseling immediately, absolutely immediately. And that started whenever he had asked for an open marriage, and whenever I felt that everything started breaking. There was a text hotline that I could use from that work my job provided to talk to a therapist. And then I actually met a guy that I slowly befriended who was in college for psychology, and we worked together a lot. There was a lot of conversations, a lot of therapy. I mean, we're talking every day, and a lot of journaling and digging deep, because whenever I would be really emotional, that's whenever I would journal things out, and I would say, how I was feeling, and I went back and I started to see patterns. And then I would kind of dig at those patterns and be like, well, why am I feeling like I'm not good enough? And I would start with that. And then I would, just keep asking why and keep digging deeper into that until I started to see answers. And the healing process was very, very intense because I wasn't going to let him win. I wasn't just going to lay down and take it. So that was something that I just didn't give up on, and I kept working hard at every single day,
It
even
had to
though he
been
was constantly harassing me.
like I said, it had been liberating that you got your voice back and gaining some control over your life, and especially for your children.
Yes, um, it was amazing, but starting to speak out and become me again became very scary as well. That's whenever he started threats. And I wasn't even really like gossiping with anyone, but if somebody were to overhear me say, hey, he's called like 5 or 6 times today, something as simple as that, somehow it would manage to get back to him. And he would, start calling and harassing me and texting my number. And I couldn't block him yet and I couldn't change my number because I owed him money that I agreed to pay him to get him to leave peacefully. And it was like being harassed by, the worst mafia family on TV or something. It was really bad because
Yeah,
it was
I can
a
imagine.
constant
Yeah,
threat. It was almost worse than being married to him.
yeah, I can imagine. Again, he's still wanting to hold on to that control, and he was slowly losing it. And so I can see where you're saying it was kind of scary trying to reposition myself because again, not knowing what he potentially would do.
Yeah, he got really mad whenever I changed the locks because after the divorce, he waited till the kids got on the school bus, and he came into my home and I was in bed asleep, and he just walked through the door like he still lived here, and he came into the bedroom, and uh you know things were not good in that situation. And whenever I changed the locks, he told me I didn't have a right to because I still owed him money. And so I changed the locks anyway, and I didn't change them back. And I told him that if he didn't stop, I was going to call the sheriff's office and get a lawyer. And eventually he stopped with that, but then he started harassing me at work more.
Yeah. Okay, so this guy, yeah, he needs some help for himself, some psychological. It sounds like to me. Um, for him to continue on like this. All right, so let's get to the better side of the story. So you moved on, finally, getting more adept. You're growing, mature, powerful, having your voice back again, finding a new relationship, and you're living your life to your fullest. So let's get into this.
Okay, so that support person that I mentioned that I befriended, that was a psychology student, he's
Mm-hmm.
now my fiance.
All right.
And we knew each other for a year just as acquaintances. And then we became close friends, and he kind of helped me through things. And I helped him through some things as well, because we both really enjoy deep intellectual conversations. So, about a year and a half of knowing each other, and through this healing process, we started dating. And that was a very slow process and a lot of open communication. But from where I dug deep, really, really hard, and worked diligently in the healing process, I was able to see things as they were. And we kind of walked forward together in a very unlikely relationship, because both of us didn't want anything to do with relationships. But because I took the time to heal, life is so much more beautiful. I mean, it's going to sound so cheesy, but the sun is brighter. The world is more beautiful. I love deeper than I ever could have imagined. It's like living in a fairy tale. And, we're years into this. We've been together dating for almost 3 years, known each other for nearly 5. So this isn't like a silly little honeymoon stage. You know what I mean? This is real. And we've been living together for about a year and a half as well. So, I mean, that's
Well,
pretty
you got to
safe to say
learn each
that
other.
we're okay.
Yeah, you got to learn each other and know what's good, what's bad, and what to do, what not to do with each other. How to control,
Exactly.
yourself on not to get him mad, and he knows what not to get you upset. And if you do, work each other. You have plenty of time, yes, to know each other real well.
Yeah, it's all about communication, and we've gotten really good at that, because that was the basis of our relationship. One of the other coolest things that has happened is that my abuser did find a new target. And I met her early on in their relationship, because it was, within it was he actually cheated on me with her, which was okay. And I didn't blame her for that, because I realized that she didn't know that. And I kept those lines of communication with her open. And a couple years later, because she'd asked me, she's like, what's he really like? I'm hearing all these rumors about how bad he treated you. And because we live in a small town, so things get around pretty fast. And I told her, I was like, those rumors are true. But she wanted to give him a chance. She didn't want to just judge him. He can change. You know how women are. We always want to think the best of people. And that's like a good thing and a horrible thing for us. So I kept those lines of communication open. But a couple years later, she contacted me, and he was doing all of the same stuff to her. And I felt so bad for her. But at the same time, it was nice to know that, I mean, it just verified that I wasn't the crazy one, because that really haunts you for a long time. And her and I got to talking, and she wanted out of the relationship and she needed help. So I was her support person.
Okay.
And that was so rewarding and just so amazing to be able to help someone else, that I started looking for ways that I could help spread information about domestic violence and sexual assault awareness. And I went and volunteered for um, a survivor advocacy outreach program, and I did 40 hours of training, which is required in the state of Ohio to be able to operate and be on the crisis lines and to work as an advocate. And now I'm, generally speaking, not this month because I'm busy with the book launch, but normally once a week I'm on the line for overnight, answering any calls that might come in for the domestic violence and rape crisis line.
And I'm sorry that you've been through all this, But again, sorry that you've been through all this, but I'm loving how you have grown and mature, found yourself again. It's good for your children to see all this, to learn from you, and how you're able to use this experience to help someone else get out of their situation. This is so great.
Thank you. I went through and like, during the process, it was almost every day that there was sexual assault. And now, I mean, I was living in hell, and that's what it really felt like. And writing the book was part of my healing process. But I remember as I got part of the way through writing it, just kind of looking at it and realizing that it was something that could really help other women, that could help them not feel quite as alone. And I'm completely honest in it. I tell about what I was thinking, how I was feeling, and the mistakes that I made along the way, because I think that's important. Because just because we're going through this, we're going to do some things that maybe isn't who we are. And that's because of the trauma response. It's a very difficult thing to go through. And we can't completely blame ourselves for that. We need to own it and realize why, and forgive ourselves for the mistakes that we make and for the things that we're not okay with, that we had to endure.
I'm a
But
big
it's
believer
important
in
for us to
I'm a
realize
big
why.
believer in the forgiving ourselves. We make
Yes.
stupid mistakes. We make honest mistakes, but we don't need to hang on to them for a lifetime to make life worse. I can't go do this because I got a DUI 40 years ago. I can't go do this because last week no. Forgive yourself, learn from it, try not to do it again. We're going to goof up as we get older. Not that we want to, but it's going to happen. So when we forgive ourselves, I mean, we're taught to forgive people that's hurt us, but rarely are we taught to forget ourselves. And I'm a big believer that you got to forgive yourself as well from there to be able to move on. So, Jenna,
Yes.
well, I appreciate you coming on here. We need to start wrapping up here. Man, I'm just so I'm glad we met up here, and I'm glad you're sharing your story. I just love seeing your smile, and you have blossomed, and you're just helping other people. That's the big thing. When we can get through our struggles and then share that experience and share some techniques to help others get through it, that's one reason why we're here, I believe. Okay, is to help each other. It's not everything, it's not the only thing, but it's one thing, is to help other people. And so I appreciate you doing this, taking your suffering, your pain, and has found a purpose for it.
I'm really glad that I didn't go through this for no reason. I'm glad that I wrote the book. Everybody says it's triggering, but like I said before, sometimes it's good to be triggered. Sometimes it's good to see darkness and the light that is on the other side. It's good to have and really show people, because it seems so empty whenever you're going through that. Oh, you'll get through this. People say so many generic things. They'll say, you'll get through this. Well, why don't you just leave? Most people don't leave because they're afraid they're going to die, and that's a very relevant thing. They have to plan. They have to figure out their safest way out. It is never as simple as all that. Either that or they think it's all their fault. So people
Well,
really,
it's not that they think it's their fault. They've been groomed to think it's their
exactly.
fault, and so yeah, so then they inherit this misbelief from their bruiser abuser. So, all right, thank you. Hey, tell us how people can find your book, Sheila's Men. How we can find that? And you said about a book launch, and then give your
You can
website,
find it.
social media, and how people can get hold of you.
Okay. You can find Sheila's Men and Within the Gray just about anywhere books are sold, with the easiest obviously being Amazon, Barnes and Noble. You can get it in any brick and mortar store. You just probably have to order it because it's so new. It takes them a little while to get books in. And that goes the same for both books. You can find me on social media on facebook.com/author Jenna Ashlyn. And Twitter is Jenna Ashlyn1. And Instagram is Jenna Ashel, just basically to the L. And, I wasn't able to get the Y and the N in there. And if all else fails, just Google author Jenna Ashlyn and all kinds of stuff will pop up.
I tell people just do the Googling and they'll come to you then. So, and I will actually take the information and put it in the show notes to make it easier for people to click on and find you as well. And so, all right, Jenna, appreciate you being here and sharing your story, as hard as it may be sometimes and touching as it can be. Again, you're helping someone else. Hey, now we know there's people out there hurting and struggling today. If you can leave us with a powerful message to help them get through today, you'll be leaving a blessing for them.
No matter what darkness you're going through, no matter how difficult, just realize that the light on the other side of this, and there is a light, is brighter than the darkness that you're going through. Is brighter than any darkness you'll ever go through. All you have to do is let yourself heal. Give yourself that time. Embrace what you're feeling, and I promise you, it gets better.
Amen, sister. Yes, it gets better. You're not all wounds can be closed, not all things can be taken away, but you'll be able to better handle it and then help other people. I'm just big on the helping other people. So, all right. Thank you again, Jennifer, for being here. Mystique, thank you for coming in, and you have a blessed day as well. Everyone else, hey, thank you for hearing this. Share to someone you know that can use some motivation, some inspiration, some hope. That's the big thing, some hope to know that they can get through their situation. Do something today, tomorrow, something next week that's going to help you persevere past your paralysis.